Hello everyone and welcome to my review of Maglam Lord. All of the gameplay in this video was captured on a PlayStation 5, but the game's also available for PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch. And one more thing I need to let you know before we begin is that a review code was provided to me by PQube. So what is Maglam Lord? Well, it's an action RPG that incorporates side-scrolling hack-and-slash combat, weapon crafting, and some dating sim elements. The gameplay can really be broken down into three main sections, but before we get into those, let's talk about the story and the theme. You play as the resurrected demon lord named Kilizurk, who was defeated in battle many years ago. You take control of them as they wake up in a more modern world that they know nothing about or understand. You quickly find out that they're an endangered being and close to extinction, and so finding a suitable person for marriage becomes very important as it's the only way to ensure the continuation of their kind. When you first start up the game, you'll get a choice of a male or female Kilizurk, both of which are fully voice acted, and there's absolutely no restrictions on who you can date and marry in the game. Throughout the game, you'll be able to make dialogue choices that affect your relationships with other characters and the ending of the game. Some choices you make don't make a difference, but the ones that do are always denoted with a symbol. The choices that affect the characters will have a little image of the character with a heart next to them. Selecting one of these during dialogue will increase your heart rating with that person. The more hearts you have, the more dates you can go on with that person, and the closer you'll become. There's also another type of dialogue choice that can unlock equipable titles that act almost like a piece of gear, giving you more HP, attack power, or defense, for example. You'll be given a choice between cool, funny, and demonic. Selecting these options a certain amount of times will unlock specific titles, and you can keep an eye on your progress in the Titles tab on the stats screen. As I mentioned earlier, the game has three important sections that you'll spend a lot of time in. Those are the house menu, overworld, and battle screens. The house menu is your gateway to pretty much all of the systems in the game. In the beginning, you'll only have access to a few of these options, but within an hour or so, you'll have them all available to you and you'll be taught how to use them. I'll give you a quick explanation for each one and we'll start at the top. The stats screen is probably just what you think it is. You can check your character's level, equip them with various gear, select their titles, and purchase new skills for them to use in battle. You can also select which character you want to be your partner here. The request board is where you select the missions or quests you wish to play. There's various types of quests such as killing specific mutabeasts or collecting certain materials, but only certain marked ones will progress the story. Some have bonus objectives, and of course the more of them you do, the more items, money, and XP you'll earn. The Maglam Forge is where you forge this game's weapons, which, as you probably guessed, are called Maglams. Weapons can be forged from the materials you gathered from questing, and more powerful versions of the same weapon can be created with rarer materials. Weapons have four power grades: A, S, SS, and LGD, which stands for Legendary. Weapons come in three types: swords, axes, and spears, and each enemy you fight in the game will be weak to a specific type, so it is worth carrying one of each. Luckily, weapons can be swapped in real time during a battle. You can add a special deco to each weapon to give it various bonuses, such as more attack power or adding the chance to burn a target. Each deco can be things like little charms or Japanese kanji written on the blade, and you can move them around to change the look as you wish. The Forge is also the place where you can equip weapons to the characters, and it's worth noting that you only ever need one of any piece of gear. If you've just created a really powerful Maglam that you like, you don't need to create three for three different characters. If you own one, it can be equipped to everyone at the same time, and the same is true for armor as well. The items section is simply where you buy and sell items for in-game money. Like a lot of other JRPGs, you'll sometimes find items during a quest that exist purely to be sold, a lot like the gold nuggets from the Pokemon games, for example. And there is one other thing in this section, and that's the tax system. It's essentially just a trade system. The game will offer you a limited amount of rare items, and you simply need to trade them the items they want in return for the ones you want. The Endangered Species section is a small book that gives you information on the various characters in the game, and also on some of the random collectible species that you can find hiding out in the wild during a mission. After you rescue them, you may find that they have a side quest for you, so it's worth seeking them out when you can. The Teach Me section is simply a place that houses all of the game's tutorials, so you can go back and check them out again if you need to. The Love Dojo, and yes, that is actually what it's called, is where you can chat with the Love Guru, which is this absolute unit that you see before you. You can check your relationship status with various characters, and sometimes you'll be able to initiate a date from this screen. The Gallery is where you can look at and listen to all of the unlocked art and music, and I don't think the last two need much of an explanation. And now we move on to the next main section, which is the Overworld. After confirming the quest that you'd like to do, you'll be dropped into the Overworld. If you're already familiar with the term Overworld, then you probably already understand what's going on here, but essentially this is where the exploration happens. No combat actually occurs on this screen while you're walking around. You can move around the space, pick up items from the floor, and initiate combat by walking into a roaming mutabeast. As you explore the overworld, you'll be able to find your way using the in-game map. It shows you how the areas all connect to each other and which sections are blocked, and it should help you to navigate through the level if you get lost. There are of course a variety of different maps to explore, such as forests, a hillside, a machine factory, and more. Occasionally you'll find a safe area that looks like a red portal. You can enter these at any time to access most of the house menu's features, and it will completely recover your HP and SP. Other than picking up items, opening random chests, and starting battles with enemies, there's not much more to say about the overworld. However, you will be seeing a lot of it. The final section of gameplay is obviously the combat system. When you initiate a fight with a mutabeast in the overworld, you'll transition into the battle screen. Battles take place on a fixed 2D plane, and that allows you to move left and right. Plus you can jump, and while there are some things to consider, combat is mostly hack and slash. You have a standard combo that you can use, which is mapped to a single face button, skills are on another face button, items are on another face button, and so is jump. If you hold down the combo button, you can unleash a powerful charge attack, but holding down the button for skills or items will stop time completely and allow you to cycle through your options. Tapping the button a single time is how you actually use the skill or item though. You'll also have some active skills on the triggers, and all skills require SP to activate. During combat, you'll also be able to transform into Killer Zurk's Demon Lord form by clicking the right stick in when the demon gauge is full. You are much stronger in this form, and it's very helpful for dealing a lot of damage very quickly. Each enemy you fight has a weakness to a certain weapon type, or perhaps I should explain it as a resistance to the other two weapon types. If an enemy has a spear symbol above them, you really should switch to your spear, as they'll take greatly reduced damage from swords and axes. You can switch between your Maglam weapons during combat and in the overworld by using left and right on the D-pad. And as far as gameplay goes, I think that's most things covered. So now, let me share my personal opinions on the game, starting with the stuff I liked. So what are some good things about Maglam Lord? Well, for a start, I think the artwork of the characters and the backgrounds are incredibly well done, and all the little attentions to detail are definitely appreciated. In fact, I actually think the 2D art in this game easily outshines the 3D assets. They just have a lot of personality and different expressions to them during dialogue, and their mouths move when they talk, which doesn't seem like much, but for anyone who's played a lot of JRPGs, you'll know that a lot of them don't have moving mouths. It's not a big deal, of course, and it doesn't, make the game that much better, but I do appreciate the detail and the effort. I also found the writing to be genuinely funny, and I don't think the humor always works in these kind of games, and that's probably because the Japanese sense of humor is a bit different to the West. Sometimes things just don't translate that well. Maglam Lord was actually written by Kei Miyakazuki, who also wrote for the Summon Night series, and either he understands the Western way of thinking or the translation team did a hell of a job. It's kind of like how the English dub for High School DxD was done, if you've ever seen that. Whoever directed the English voice actors for that was an absolute genius in my opinion. That's one of the only animes where I've literally laughed out loud multiple times. Either way, what's here in this game is kind of brilliant honestly, and by the way, this game only has Japanese voice acting. There's not actually an English dub for it, unfortunately. And you guys know me, I always go for an English dub when one's available, like with High School DxD, but here I didn't feel like it mattered. The story and the humor got through to me, and all in all, I thought it was great. It's also got this very amusing but relaxed go at your own pace kind of feel to it that I really enjoyed. The theme and the tone of the game actually reminded me of the Disgaea series at many times during my playthrough. The main character, the conversations that the characters have with each other, and the humor, I don't know, I mean, if you told me it was some kind of Disgaea spin-off, I probably would have believed you. I just really liked the direction the game goes in, and it was genuinely a lot of fun to play through. At times, mainly during the dialogue, I felt like, in my head, I believed I was actually playing a Disgaea game. Now, obviously, the gameplay isn't really anything like the mainline Disgaea stuff, but it just gave me that kind of vibe, I guess, and I think that actually helped me get into it, especially in the beginning, and that's a plus in my book. I think the dating sim stuff is pretty light, but even so, it's a nice addition. And just so you guys know, there's not really any kind of fan service in here except for a few suggestive lines here and there and a couple of images, but really nothing fan servicey at all. I thought they would have just worked a single character into the story that you had to marry at the end, but they decided to do a simple system that gives you the freedom to go after any character you choose. It's not that complex or anything, but it does add a little something to the game, and I appreciate the effort. In that same line of thinking the side quests, while basic, do have some interesting little stories attached to them, which made them pretty enjoyable to complete. Lastly, I actually found the combat to be quite fun, although that was after the first maybe 2 hours or so. Initially, it felt kinda unwieldy, clunky, and imprecise, but after a while I got into the flow of it and I really forced myself to try a few different approaches. I mean, yeah, it's a hack and slash game and you can probably beat most enemies with simple weapon attacks, but if you actually take the time to play around with the skills and the Maglam weapon forging systems, it becomes a largely satisfying battle system. I thought I was really going to hate the fixed 2D perspective in battles, but actually, as it turns out, no, I think it works rather well here. It's not the type of combat I would normally go for, but I think it works perfectly well here, and it makes me wonder if I should go and try some more 2D combat games pretty soon. I have always wanted to play Odin Sphere, so I may pick that up soon. I know it's kind of different, but still looks pretty fun. But anyway, the game's battle mechanics did still feel a little bit off even until the end of the game, but once I got better weapons, learned to use the charge attacks more, and got some more abilities, it did mostly click into place. And I think that about does it for this section, so let's go over some things I didn't like. I think overall I liked the game more than I disliked it, so I imagine this might be a relatively short section, but we'll see how we get on. I just finished telling you that I wasn't too happy with the combat system at first, but it clicked with me after a few hours. That said, if you look at the battle footage here, you might notice that every time I get a hit on the enemy, there's this kind of slow motion effect that occurs and makes everything look a little bit stuttery. That's not the frame rate or anything like that, it's just a design choice that some games use, and I'm not sure exactly what purpose this effect serves, but I know they use it in some fighting games. Perhaps it allows for more time to counter or to add to your combo or something, I don't really know, but if you do, let me know in the comment section, I'd be interested to find out. But yeah, I don't personally mind the effect too much, but I have seen that a lot of people don't like it in other games, so I think it's worth mentioning that it does occur on virtually every hit you do. So if you're someone who doesn't like it and it bothers you, you're probably going to hate it here. And I think when you couple this effect with the sometimes clunky controls, I could see some players out there having a hard time getting into this. If you can look past those things, I think you'll enjoy the combat after a little while, but if you're someone who can't stand that kind of thing, this just may not be for you. I do like the fact that they added the dating sim stuff, and you know, this is a small studio and all too often small studios leave a ton of their games on the cutting room floor, so it's always nice to see when a system, regardless of how small, makes it in. That said, I wish there was just a little bit more to it and that there were a few more choices of dateable characters. I think there's maybe 6 or perhaps 7 in total, but I think maybe 10 would have been a good number to strive for. Again, I mean, it's possible there could have been more characters, but they had to cut them out. I mean, who really knows at this point? But it's not that it's a bad system, I would have just liked it to have been expanded a little bit more, that's all. And lastly, I hate to say it, but I don't think the 3D visuals are very good in this game. Again, this is a small studio, and I'm always a gameplay over graphics kind of person, but I kind of wish it didn't have the chibi style in the overworld and the battle screens. I would have liked to have seen the standard, you know, adult looking versions of the characters running around and in the combat, but at the same time, I do kind of get why they went down this route. This does look and play like a game made for the Nintendo Switch and then ported to the PS4. I mean, it doesn't look outright ugly, does it? I mean, I don't think it does, but nothing really looks as bad as some of the sections of Pokemon Arceus, but, you know, the game is still very bland and plain looking most of the time. I think the battle screens look a bit better than the overworld due to having more environmental details and some decent lighting as well, but being completely honest, for this type of game, I don't really think it's that big of an issue. It's perfectly serviceable for what it's trying to do. And with all that said, let's now move on to the conclusion. In my opinion, Maglam Lord is an amusing little experience that knows exactly what it is and doesn't take itself too seriously. I found the characters to be interesting, the writing to be hilarious at times, and the combat to be really entertaining. It did take me a few hours to truly appreciate what it was trying to provide to me, and while it's not a perfect game, I did truly have a pleasant time playing it. Ultimately, this is a small game by a small studio, and I think they did a great job with it. Not only that, they were self-aware enough to not charge full price for it. I'm not going to say it's a masterpiece or that you should rush out to buy it because it's a must-play game, but if you're a fan of lesser-known RPGs or more niche, lower-end titles in general, I think this one is well worth adding to your collection. And there you go, that's my review of Maglam Lord. It's available today, February 4th, 2022, and you can get it on PS4, PS5 and Nintendo Switch. It's also worth noting that it does have a physical release on both PS4 and Nintendo Switch if you want to pick one up. If you enjoyed the video, I really hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel, and if you like what I do and want to offer your support, please check out the first link in the video description down below. But with all that said, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.